Man, Instagram, and YouTube. And tonight we come in with you tonight to talk a little bit about the University of Georgia. We haven't been on since that big game, of course, between Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia winning 27-13 in that big victory against Tennessee in Sanford Stadium last Saturday night. By the way, we're in South Georgia. Our broadcast facilities are located in South Georgia. We are getting rain from Sister Nicole tonight. I think is it a hurricane yet, or is still a tropical storm or something? It's centered kind of down around in Florida, I think, at the moment, but it's headed right for us. I keep looking at the map, and it's headed right right for us. But they say, by the time it gets here, 30 to 40 miles an hour wind, and but a lot of rain headed our way as a tropical. Is it a tropical storm or depression, whatever the thing is? It's headed our way, but hey, we're nice and dry where we are. A little wind, not much going on with us here today. But let's talk a little bit about University of Georgia football, and we've got some stuff coming in we don't want to have, do we? Chris Hall here with you. So if you have something you want to say about the game last Saturday or the upcoming game against Mississippi State, jump in here. We'd love to hear your comments and take your questions, and we'll just talk about some Georgia football here on a rainy night in Georgia. Who sang that song? It's a rainy night in Georgia. What? There you go. I forget to. Was it Ray Charles? No, it wasn't Ray Charles. Okay, guys, if you know who sang a rainy night in Georgia, let me know. I can't remember for some reason. Okay, let's talk about this game. Georgia winning over Tennessee, 27-13. I want to tell you, we were on the field for a little bit of this game. We were fortunate enough to be down on the field, and it was amazing. Pre-game, it was amazing. But during the game, when Georgia was playing Tennessee, the noise level got up to 139 decibels. I guess that's what you call it. 139, whatever it was, which equals the sound from a jet airplane taking off of an aircraft carrier. And it really, I tell you, we were on the field for a little while for this game, and it was just an amazing experience to be amongst all of that crowd with all of that noise. Yeah, we walked down to the Tennessee end where, the Tennessee fans had a little corner right over, if I can get my finger right over in that section is where the Tennessee fans were. And they had a little part of their marching band. And we heard Rocky Top. But we didn't hear much of a Rocky Top during the game because it wasn't much for them to Rocky Top about. Go Dogs. Hey, Mickey, how you doing from Spring Hill, Tennessee? Okay, well, he had a good time this week. Mickey had a good time this week. I'm sure he didn't rag it on the Tennessee fans too much. But Georgia winning 27-13 over Tennessee. Of course, it was billed as the game of the century. Now, it was a great game. It was a great game for Georgia. I wouldn't necessarily bill it the game of the century. That was a little over the top there. But it was a great game for Georgia. And I tell you, to the game, we just understood that Tennessee was overwhelmed. Tennessee was not prepared for that noise, that venue, or that important of a game. Now, Tennessee's got a good football team, and Georgia may play Tennessee again this season in the college football playoffs. Don't know about that. But Georgia may play Tennessee again. At a neutral site, but Tennessee was overwhelmed Saturday. They were absolutely overwhelmed Saturday. They were shaken to the core, and Georgia took advantage of that. Georgia just played a perfect game. For 3 quarters, it was a perfect game. 4th quarter, the game was, pretty well in, and they were not. Georgia was not quite as efficient in the 4th quarter, but Georgia winning 27-13. And, of course, Georgia reclaiming the number 1 ranking in the country. Go Dogs. They're number 1. Georgia's number 1 in all of the polls, and now the number 1 in the college football rankings. College football playoff rankings. Just a review of this game, and I watched it again. When I got home, I watched it again on television, and it was just as impressive on television as it was live. Man, that was crazy. That was crazy in Sanford Stadium, and the fans really affected, no doubt about that. Tennessee was shaken, and so they were kind of thrown off by the crowd, and I think they were thrown off by how Georgia is a good football team. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, I don't know if the University of Georgia is a good football team. I mean, the Bulldogs are indeed the number one team in the country. It's Georgia and then everyone else. Now, that doesn't mean that the national championship for Georgia is a lock. That certainly is not the case. We're talking about college football when crazy things can happen. But right now, there is no doubt that Georgia is the number one team in the country. But, Coach Smart has been saying this week, he's been telling his team, he's been telling the fans, humility is only 1 week away. And Georgia's got a tough game coming up this coming Saturday, and we'll talk about that. But just a review of the Tennessee game. Stetson Bennett had a marvelous game. 17 of 25 in passing, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. 98.1 quarterback rating. Can't get much better than that. Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee, Heisman favorite coming into the game, was 23 of 33, 195 yards, 1 interception. So Stetson Bennett, I got to tell you, this Heisman Trophy thing, as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, and we'll look at this, Stetson Bennett has just as good statistics than Hendon Hooker, and even better than any of the top-rated quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett is the man. Ladies and gentlemen, the mailman is the man. And if you're going to talk about a quarterback winning the Heisman Trophy, and usually quarterbacks do, sometimes you have somebody else or a different position player winning it, you've got to put Stetson Bennett in the conversation. I am sorry. He belongs there. He needs to be there. He outplayed Hendon Hooker on Saturday. No doubt. As far as rushing, Kenny McIntosh was a tough dude on Saturday. 10 carries, 52 yards. Dejon Edwards is he's a tough rusher. 16 carries for 46 yards. Kendall Milton, 3 carries for 8 yards. Receiving, Ladd McConkey had a great day on Saturday. 5 receptions, 94 yards. Kenny McIntosh had 2 receptions for 52 yards. Georgia defensively. We're going to talk about the defense. Oh, my word. Georgia defensively on Saturday. At 6 sacks. I think Georgia defense had 6 sacks coming into the game. They had 6 sacks in that game on Saturday. Just outstanding. Let's see, how many sacks did Georgia have? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Javon Bullard had 2 of those. Malik Starks, he was, we'll tell you, he got voted for something, Defensive Player of the Week or something like that. Had 10 tackles, 6 solo tackles. Javon Bullard had 2 sacks. Jalen Carter had 1 sack, and Jalen Carter played a marvelous game on Saturday. Georgia just played a great game. Georgia just played absolutely a great game. And we'll talk about our punter, our Aussie punter. What a punt. Oh, me. I hate to sound like such a homer, but it was a great game for Georgia. The outstanding. So Georgia has beat Tennessee and Oregon, and those teams are in the top 10, very close to being qualified for at least, in the top 4 in the country. 3 Georgia Bulldogs received SEC Player of the Week honors for their performances against the Tennessee. Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett was named the co-offensive player of the week, along with LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels had a great game. in LSU's win over Alabama. Bennett scored 3 total touchdowns, threw for 257 yards in Georgia's 27-13 win over Tennessee. Georgia freshman standout Malik Starks was named the conference's co-freshman of the week, along with LSU's hero against Alabama, Mason Taylor. Starks recorded 10 tackles against Tennessee. He was one-on-one on many of those tackles. He dominated in man coverage. Malik Starks probably is the best freshman player in the country. He is constantly around the ball. And now he's a veteran. You know, you can't, he's a freshman, but hey, he's played 9 games now, so he's a veteran. And Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter was named the SEC's Defensive Lineman of the Week. Put constant pressure on Hendon Hooker, finished the game with 1 sack, and Jalen Carter forced 2 fumbles. It was the defense, Georgia's defense was suffocating. Nolan Smith was out, but Nolan was on the sideline encouraging the Georgia defense. The Georgia defense sacked Hendon Hooker 6 times. Tennessee's offense committed 7 false start penalties. That was due to the crowd mostly. Georgia held the Tennessee Volunteers to 2 for 13 on 3rd downs on Saturday afternoon. Tennessee rushed for only 94 yards on the ground with 43 attempts. They tried to run the ball 43 times, got 94 yards, 2.2 yards per carry by Tennessee on Saturday. I got a bunch of stuff here, so I'm going to read it as I come to it. Brett Thorson, good day, mate, is from Australia. He's our punter. And he maybe at least one of the plays of the game, Thorson launched a thunderous 75-yard punt. Georgia was 4th down deep in their own territory. Thorson launched a thunderous 75-yard punt. Thunderous. It's an adjective, which means he really kicked the ball. It sailed over the Volunteers' return man, bounced to the pylon, and was thrown out of bounds at the 1-yard line by Nyland Green. He kept it out of the end zone. And that really flipped the field. And what happened after that was that Tennessee was in its own end zone, and then you had, that safety that wasn't called, and I don't know how they didn't call a safety on that play. Anyway, Tennessee had to punt the ball from the shadows of its own goalpost, set up a short field for Georgia. Georgia then struck on a 1-play, 37-yard touchdown drive to put them up 14-3 in the second quarter. So it was just a great game, and I tell you what, we recorded it, and we've been watching it, and every time Georgia wins, the thing hasn't changed yet. But we need to turn the page. Okay, the Tennessee game was great. It was marvelous. But games like that, for it to continue to mean a lot, Georgia has to continue to win. And that's big pressure. I mean, Georgia, it's big pressure. Georgia now is number 1, the clear number 1 team in the country. And they've got to travel to Starkville, Mississippi for the game on Saturday night at 7 p.m. And here comes the Cowbells. I don't know who started that. The Cowbells in Starkville, Mississippi. Bless their hearts. I don't know who started it. There's two really aggravating things in SEC football. Well, I'm sure there's more. But there's at least 2 aggravating things. That Rocky Top thing for the University of Tennessee, the fans and the band and all of that. Oh, that gets on your nerves. And the Cowbells at Starkville, that gets on your nerves as well. The Bulldogs have won the SEC East in 4 of the 6 seasons under Kirby Smart. And it looks like, if Georgia wins against Mississippi State on Saturday night, Georgia will clinch the SEC East because, you put all the scenarios in and, it doesn't matter what Tennessee does. Georgia holds the tiebreaker with Tennessee. Now, Georgia needs to win. If Georgia wins on Saturday night, they clinch it. If, God forbid, they lose, they can still clinch it by beating Kentucky the next week. And so it looks like Georgia, and we're not counting our hatches before they chicken. I know. But it looks like Georgia is, primed, positioned to win the SEC East. And then to maybe LSU in the SEC championship game. Or maybe Ole Miss. That's going to be interesting. By the way, we'll go over the college football playoff things in just a moment. But isn't it weird that Alabama and Clemson got beat by Notre Dame, got demolished by Notre Dame? Isn't it kind of interesting? You don't see Alabama and Clemson in the top 4. When is the last time that has happened? And by the way, we love SEC shorts. They do these videos dedicated to SEC football. SEC shorts, I think.com. You got to see the video they posted this week. It's just hilarious. It's about Alabama and, their issues and they pick on everybody. The SEC shorts, they're out of Birmingham, Alabama. They do such a fantastic job. We got to get that guy. We got to get I forgot his name. We got to get him on one of our podcasts. By the way, we're going to have Tim Worley on our podcast week. We'll be posting that up. Tim Worley was a monster for Georgia. Went on to play for Pittsburgh and Chicago in the NFL. But the SEC shorts, it's just hilarious video of Alabama and their issues. Now, listen, they pick on everybody. But it's so funny. But it is kind of interesting. No Alabama, no Clemson in the top 4. When is the last time you have seen that? Clemson's probably done. They have a weak schedule. They may win the ACC and have a winning record and be knocking on the door. But I think that loss to Notre Dame, and it was a big loss. Notre Dame just took it to them. That's going to hurt Clemson to make the college football playoffs. And it couldn't happen for school. But okay. So a couple of other things here. Now, let's talk about Georgia and Mississippi State. Georgia is a 16-point favorite in the game this coming Saturday night. It'll be at 7:00. Mississippi State won last week, 39-33, in an overtime win over Auburn. Auburn, of course, firing Brian Harsin as their coach. And what was it? Cadillac Williamson, is that his name? Former player, is the interim coach at Auburn. I watched some of that game last week with Mississippi State and Auburn. That dude was on fire. And a good Christian man, too. Just throw that in. A good Christian man, too. But Mississippi State won that game over Auburn 39-33 last week. So Mississippi State is 6-3 on the year. Georgia now 9-0 on the year. This is Georgia's third true road game of the season. That thing with Florida and Jacksonville doesn't count as a home game or a road game. I don't know what it is. But this is the third true road game of the season for Georgia. And you remember what happened in the last road game? Georgia and Missouri, and we were all on the edge of our seat that Missouri was going to take out Georgia. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You're going to have those cowbells, and Mississippi State will be ready to roll. Mississippi State, of course, is coached by Mike Leach, who gives. I like him. I like these quirky guys, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach. I'm a traditionalist in a lot of ways, but I like these guys. Mike Leach giving wedding advice to one of the commentators on the field the other, couple of weeks ago. Just hilarious. He's a hilarious guy, and he's a good football coach. Mississippi State has what they call the air raid offense. developed by Hal Mummy, who was at Valdosta State. And hey, how you doing? Who we got here? Hey, Chris, how you doing, my man? Good to have you with us tonight. The air raid offense. So here's what Mississippi State does. Now they're different from Tennessee. Tennessee throws the ball a lot, and so does Mississippi State, but they have a different kind of scheme, kind of thing, you know. And Mississippi State throws the ball. 70% of their plays are passing plays. 7 out of 10. They average 50 passing attempts a game. 50. 50 passing attempts a game. They run the ball 22 times a game. And it's the air raid offense. It's a kind of a different kind of thing. And in fact, Coach Smart said that during the off week, they actually took a day during the off week that Georgia had before the Florida game to work on defending Mississippi State's air raid offense. They've been studying the thing the whole year. So hopefully they'll be ready, and I'm sure they will be. That Georgia defense, could it be? Could it be? Georgia last year had 15 NFL draft picks off of that team, a lot of them on the defensive side of the ball. Could it be that this Georgia team is better than the Georgia team last year that won the national championship? I mean, that's a legitimate question. Could it be? And this defense is young, and they're talented, and they're fast, and now this game will be on ESPN. If you go to Starkville, okay. But if you're going to watch it on television, it'll be on ESPN, 7:00 game. Sean McDonough will be doing the play-by-play. Todd Blackledge will be doing the analysis. Those two guys are great. That's ESPN's number one, team to play to call a college football game. Molly McGrath is the sideline reporter. She does great as well. What we like to do is we try to sync up Georgia's radio feed from the Georgia Football Radio Network with the video on the television, and and you usually have a delay from one or the other. Scott Howard, Eric Zier, DJ Shockley, they do a great job. But the game is Saturday night, 7:00, and listen, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Mississippi State's going to be ready. Georgia's going to be challenged. So we got to turn the page from that great Tennessee game. That's the way it is in the SEC. That's the way and especially this time of the year, as the season goes by, it's going to be a challenge. The injury report for Mississippi State, Kenny McIntosh is probable. He's been dealing with a thigh injury. Xavier Truss, one of our offensive linemen, he is questionable. He's dealing with a toe injury. Robert Beal is questionable. He had a neck injury, a stinger, in the game against Tennessee. Amarius Mims is questionable. A.D. Mitchell is questionable. Darius Smith is questionable. Of course, Nolan Smith is out. So, Georgia will be kind of okay physically when they take on Mississippi State. Did you hear about this? Tennessee fans leaked Stetson Bennett's telephone number. Somehow all these Tennessee fans got Stetson Bennett's phone number. And they called him throughout the night before the game with Tennessee. And Stetson Bennett said he received 600 to 700 phone calls and text, presumably from Tennessee fans. Somebody leaked his number to Tennessee fans. And so, that all night long they were calling him and texting him. Now Stetson Bennett said, he finally figured out how to cut all that off. So he just cut it all off. Well, that was kind of, and so did you see what he did? He threw his first touchdown pass. He ran up to the section of the stadium where all the Tennessee fans were sitting, and he did this kind of thing, showing, Stetson Bennett is so cool. He is just so cool, ladies and gentlemen. There's going to be a movie made about this dude. And if Georgia wins the national championship again, there's definitely going to be a movie about Stetson Bennett. I just, I don't know what else you can say about him. Okay, here's the passing yard leaders. Is that in the SEC for quarterbacks, the passing yard leaders. Will Rogers, who plays for Mississippi State, Georgia will face him on Saturday night. He's the leading passing yard leader among quarterbacks in the SEC. Right now, he has 2,912 passing yards. Guess who's second? Stetson Bennett has 2,606 yards passing. Guess who's third? Hendon Hooker. He has 2,533 yards. Guess who's fourth? Bryce Young from Alabama. He has 2,234 yards, the defending Heisman Trophy winner. Stetson Bennett is, and Georgia doesn't pass near as many times as Will Rogers of Mississippi State. Stetson Bennett is second in passing yards in the SEC. And he stacks up pretty well against college quarterbacks from all over, including C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. Georgia, I got my stack of stuff, so I'm just running through it here. Apparently, there were some anonymous coaches last week who went to ESPN, or ESPN talked to them about Georgia and the Tennessee game. And some coaches were dissing the Georgia defense. One of them said, and I quote, "I would not be surprised if Tennessee scores 50 points against Georgia." Georgia, here's what that guy said. Georgia's front is average. Their back end is below average. Well, Tennessee didn't score 50 points. They scored 13. And they were averaging like 49 or something. So the Georgia defense took note of that, and some of the players made comments about it. Oh, really? 50 points? Georgia's defense played so good. They played so good. Georgia's offense played. That was almost a perfect game. Yeah, it got a little dicey in the fourth quarter. Tennessee scored a touchdown. They could have tried the onside kick and all that kind of stuff. But by then it was raining. It was raining cats and dogs. College football playoff rankings. Georgia's number 1. Is this right? Yeah, Georgia's number 1. Ohio State's number 2. Michigan number 3, and TCU now is number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. So if the season ended today, those 4 teams would be in the college football playoffs, and Georgia would play TCU. Now, that's not how it's going to end up, because in a couple of weeks, you have Ohio State, who's had just a flimsy schedule, will take on Michigan. So whoever loses that game is going to be knocked out of the top 4, not necessarily knocked out of the college football playoffs, because, one-loss teams can make it. Georgia did last year. But, one of those teams is going to be knocked out. Tennessee is number 5 in the college football playoff rankings, followed by Oregon. Tennessee and Oregon were beaten by, by who? Georgia this year. By the way, of the top 6 teams, I was reading today, of the top 6 teams in the college football playoff rankings, only 2 teams, there's only 2 losses this season among the top 6 teams in the college football playoff rankings. Those 2 losses, Tennessee to Georgia and Oregon to Georgia. So there you go. Hey, Grady, my man. Yes, we met Grady on the field. Came up and gave me a big old hug. We like that. Good job, Grady, as well. He's part of actually the crew that kind of keeps everybody safe, and he does a great job. And those guys do a great job. And I tell you what, there's some of those state patrolmen, or whatever the policemen or whatever they are, deputies or whatever. Man, I wouldn't cross them with nothing. Them some big old boys. I did advise one of the One of the police officers who were, he's kind of hefty dude. I mean, and I'm not talking like fat hefty, muscle bound hefty. I pointed to the Tennessee section where all the fans were wearing orange. You couldn't miss them. You couldn't miss them. I said, why don't you go up there and arrest all of those guys? I just, playing around. He said, I would if I could. So Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, top 4. Then Tennessee and Oregon, 5 and 6. Then you have LSU. LSU is a 2-loss team. And then you have Southern Cal. Southern Cal's got an awful defense. I mean, they may be all right offense, but they got an awful defense. And Alabama's number 9, and then Clemson number 10. Ole Miss 11, then UCLA, and on down the line. So in the college football playoffs, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. Let's see. TCU has remaining games at Texas. Oh, is that right? They play Texas next week. TCU at Texas. So that may be a kind of a thing with them. At Baylor, and then at home with Iowa State. And they probably need to win the Big 12 and the championship game, remain undefeated to make the playoffs. Michigan has remaining home games with Nebraska and Illinois before the regular season final at Ohio State. Michigan likely needs to beat Ohio State and win the Big 10 championship to make the college football playoffs. Ohio State has remaining games at Indiana, at Maryland, and then that game against Michigan. Georgia, of course, in control of its own destiny. Oregon must win over Washington. The remaining games for Oregon: Washington at home, Utah at home. That'll be a tough game. And then Oregon State. So Oregon's obviously they're 8-1. They got a shot. UCLA's 8-1. They got a shot. They have remaining games with Arizona and USC, and then at Cal. Then USC. So Clemson, I don't know. That thing with Notre Dame probably knocked them out. But it's going to be interesting. All you got to do is win, though. Georgia needs to win. Oh, yeah. Georgia's defense allowed 2.2 yards per carry Saturday, 1 explosive play, 1 touchdown, 5.9 yards per pass attempt. Coming into the game, Tennessee was averaging 4.5 yards per carry rushing, 6.5 touchdowns per game. They got 1 touchdown against Georgia. And their passing yards, 11.2 yards per passing attempt. Georgia shut them down Saturday. But we got to turn the page now. I keep telling myself that. And by the way, did you have that in there? The Georgia-Tennessee game is the most watched college football game of the season. Did we have that in there? We had that in there somewhere, didn't we? Oh, yeah. The Georgia-Tennessee game drew an audience of over 13 million viewers on Saturday. It was televised on CBS, of course. That is the most viewers of any college football game during the 2022 college football regular season so far. Now, the Ohio State-Michigan game may have a lot of guys, too, a lot of people watching it, too. But over 13 million viewers watched that game with Georgia and Tennessee on Saturday, and that was the most so far. Let's see. The SEC has announced Monday that Georgia's road game against Kentucky will be at 3:30 on CBS. It'll be that matchup. Somebody asked me the other day when Georgia will have another night game. And my answer to that is when the contract with CBS runs out. The SEC contract with CBS, SEC and CBS, I think it's over this year, maybe next year. Because all these contracts, they got all these contract stipulations and things like that. So Georgia probably will not have another night game until that thing is done. From last week, and we'll wind it up with this. Anyway, the SEC announced that, again, Georgia's road game against Kentucky, that'll be 3:30 on November the 19th, televised by CBS. So Georgia's got two tough road games. Mississippi State at Mississippi State Saturday night at Kentucky. Now, Georgia will be the big favorite in both of those games, but they're road games in the SEC. I'll be a nervous wreck by Saturday night. I get nervous over these games, even when Georgia plays Vanderbilt. I get nervous. Yes, I have faith in the Dogs, but I still get nervous. You know. What we got here? Chris says, "I'm surprised how quickly that Brian Kelly turned LSU around." I tell you what, I'm not a Brian Kelly kind of guy. I've never been impressed with Brian Kelly as a coach. And that thing he did faking a Southern accent was horrendous. But the man's a good coach. And he is getting a lot out of LSU this season. And it is kind of surprising. I tell you, the surprises, I guess, among the top surprises in the SEC is the fall and demise of Texas A&M, 3-6. Seriously, 3-6, Texas A&M, and the rise of LSU. That's another surprise. I don't know if it and Tennessee. Nobody expected Tennessee to be this good this quick. And also another surprise is the troubles that Alabama is experiencing. Alabama's still a talented team. They've lost their games on the last play of the game. Don't count Alabama out of the college football playoffs. I mean, quirky things can happen. But there's never been a 2-loss team in the college football playoffs. It could happen this year. I don't know. Could happen, but probably not. But those are some of the surprises in the SEC. And I don't think it's a surprise that Georgia is as good as Georgia is. Now, I think there were a lot of questions. Listen, recruiting. Georgia now has the number one recruiting class, I think, in 247 sports. And listen, they had a lot of recruits in that game Saturday with Georgia and Tennessee. And if that did not impress those probable recruits for Georgia or potential recruits for Georgia, I don't know what will. I mean, I was ready to get out there on the field. I could play one play anyway. I was ready. Throw it to me, Stetson. I got it. Oh, well. So, recruiting. Georgia is just good. Kirby Smart is an underrated coach. Georgia still doesn't get the respect that it should get. I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to be a whiner, but Georgia still doesn't get the respect that it should get. They diss our quarterback. Georgia is good. Georgia is a good football team. Now, I don't want to go overboard with it and say, they're the greatest team ever or anything, but they're a very good football team. And so hopefully they'll be ready to play Mississippi State, take out Kentucky. Then you got Georgia Tech, which is kind of a rejuvenated program. What time is it? Oh, we're supposed to be gone, right? Sorry. I'm a long-winded commentator. Okay, quickly, we'll run over the results from the SEC for last week. What? What we got here? Grady says, I agree. Kirby is the top coach in college football. I just believe that's true. I really believe that's true. Now, Nick Saban. And by the way, you're hearing a lot of talk. Well, this is the end of Alabama's dynasty. Don't you believe that for 1 minute? Now, things are not as good as they have been at Alabama. But Alabama is still a talented team, and they're going to be there. Nick Saban, as long as he's the coach there, they're going to be there. Don't say, well, Alabama's done and demise. No, sir. They're still recruiting. Alabama's going to have a great team. They still have a great team. And Kirby Smart is a good football coach. Give him his due. You see a lot of these lists of the best college football coaches, and the coaches that are doing the best job in 2022. Nobody's doing a better job than Kirby Smart. Give him his due. Georgia gets disrespected in a lot of ways, and that's just the truth. And when I get elected president, I'm going to change it. No, I'm not running for president. No. But if is there a cabinet post, secretary of golf or something? I could do that. Be in charge of all the golf courses in America. Let's see. From last week in the SEC, I know it's been a long day and I'm tired, but I'm having fun. Kentucky beat Missouri last week, 21-17. Florida beat Texas A&M, 41-24. Georgia beat Tennessee, 27-13. Liberty University beat Arkansas, 21-19. Hugh Freeze is coming back to the SEC. My prediction is he will be the next coach at Auburn University. Hugh Freeze, he's a good guy. He messed up. He messed up when he was at Mississippi. We won't get into that. He messed up. But he's a good guy, and he's a great coach and a good recruiter. Now, Deion Sanders from Jackson State, maybe at Auburn. Wouldn't that be interesting? That would shake up recruiting in the SEC. But Liberty takes out Arkansas. And that's no fluke. Liberty is 19, the number 19 team in the country. Notre Dame is number 20. Alabama lost to LSU 32-31. Man, that was a great game. Alabama's defense is having its issues. Offensively, they can score, but their defense is not to the standard that Alabama has had in the past. Mississippi State beat Auburn 39-33. South Carolina beat Vanderbilt 38-27. Now, what's going on this week, and we'll close with this. Missouri at Tennessee this week. Then you have LSU at Arkansas. Now, that'll be an interesting game. Arkansas's got a lot of talent. They're at home, Fayetteville. They'll be hyped up. That crowd will be ready to go. I think Arkansas is going to beat LSU. LSU is a 3-point favorite against Arkansas in Fayetteville. That's a 12 o'clock game on Saturday. 12 o'clock games are tough. And I just got a sneaking suspicion that Sam Pittman in Arkansas is going to beat LSU. Vanderbilt takes on Kentucky. At 3:30 on Saturday, it's Alabama at Ole Miss. So Ole Miss has lost one game. Alabama's lost 2 games. Alabama's still number 6 in the country. Isn't that right? Number 6, and Ole Miss is number 11. I think Alabama will win that game. I think Alabama will beat Ole Miss. I think Alabama's going to bounce back. Then at 4 o'clock, you have South Carolina at Florida. Then, of course, 7 o'clock, Georgia at Mississippi State. The Cowbells. What would you rather have? Rocky Top or the Cowbells? And then at 7:30, you have Texas A&M at Auburn. Texas A&M. What is it? What do they have to pay Jimbo Fisher if they fire him? $86 million. Jimbo Fisher is not going to get fired unless some oil man says, I found $86 million in my couch. And we're going to take him out. But there will be a lot of changes on that staff and a lot of changes in philosophy. So anyway, that's what's happening. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. It's a rainy night in Georgia. What else do you have to do but sit around with somebody like me and let's talk some ball? By the way, we'll be talking to Tim Worley, UGA football great. He'll be on our podcast with us, I guess tomorrow. Isn't it tomorrow? We schedule that for tomorrow. We'll be talking with him about Georgia and other stuff. And stay with us now. Saturday night, we'll be with you on Facebook, pregame, halftime, and postgame. There you go. So join us. Thank you guys for being with us tonight on Dawg Talk here on a Thursday night. Georgia and Mississippi State. Go Dogs. God bless you. Have a good night. We'll talk to you.